Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be starting a short three-part series on the Mooney 20. All the recent videos, of course, have been dedicated to aircraft that I get to fly around in the real world, and this one is no exception. This version of the Mooney 20, by the way, is a nice Ovation. This is not one of the ones I get to fly. This is a nice, modern, high-tech, fancy airplane with all sorts of bells and whistles and stuff that makes it very highly capable. So this is definitely upgraded, so we're going to be doing a little bit of interpolation, but I'll do the best I can to explain the things as I go through it. Let's get started. So the Mooney 20 is one of those airplanes that when I first got into, I was surprised. I've read a lot of interesting things about these planes as being incredibly high performance and incredibly efficient, which they are. And that's why I like the plane. But what surprised me the first time is when I sat down and I'm like, all right, let me put how do I get myself in? Okay, let me play with the seat. Okay, okay, I can touch the pedals now. Oh, okay, that's different. And one of the interesting things is the seating position of this aircraft is very flat. We don't really get a good look at that here. And also, they didn't put the little bar to grab or anything for that, but I'm not worried about that too much. Is this one electronic? Nah, that would have been too good. But basically, what would happen with this airplane is they pull yourself all the way forward, and you'd be here. And there's this weird angle on the seat, and I can't quite describe it. But the best way to describe it is like being on a go-kart as far as a seating position goes. It's a little weird. The other thing that surprised me when I first climbed into this plane is this really, really goofy baggage compartment that's kind of hanging in the back. When you open this sucker, as you can see, it's got this little thing that is supposed to kind of catch on in order to stop it from opening, falling back down on your head. But that's assuming that it's a good modern version of this, which it isn't always. And I appreciate the fact they put the detail in there. The other thing that's a really big difference here, too, with this version versus the one I get to fly around in, is this back seat is a big blue chunk of vinyl from 1977, as opposed to these nice, lovely leather seats. I like that. I also appreciate the fact that, you've got the little headphone. You have your own little cabin light in here. Oh, it's so cute. I also appreciate nobody's got any air back here. Oh, I take it back. We do have oxygen hookups, so never mind. And the other thing I noticed when I first climbed into this plane is you really have to like the person next to you because they're going to be on top of you. And when they put actually their person's leg right here, and if you ever have to do trim not on the actual trim wheel, which is this guy right here, you have to reach down here and get this trim wheel, which you're never going to get your hand onto. One of the other fun things, of course, is this little switch on the floor that basically exists for basically getting fuel out of the lowest point of the system. You tug this and a bunch of fuel goes basically out of the bottom of your airplane, which I think is kind of fun. Another fun feature on this plane, too, other than the fact you have to only get it on one side, is there's actually a fuel gauge on the wing. And I always thought that was kind of wild because you can see I'm carrying a 60 per wing here. And that's kind of neat. This one does work, and I appreciate that, except for the fact that on the Mooney that I fly, you can't actually see the gauge on one side because it's all fogged up. And it's not the most pleasant thing to actually read. So anyway, enough talk about kind of these things. I'll be talking my adventures along the way. And I will say right now, there is a rather big bug with this aircraft. And I'm not going to stress about it. A recent flight sim patch broke it, but it's not going to stop me from getting where I need to go. So whatever. So what we're going to do now is get this thing rolling. And it's a pretty easy startup procedure after we've done our pre-flight and kind of gotten everything ready. One thing, the version I have is there's a cowl flap handle, and you pull it all the way out. The other thing, of course, what you have here is you have a lovely little device here that's going to actually, it's called ram air. It opens a little hatch in the front to let air in. We don't have that in this version, so I don't have to play with the ram air switch, which is a shame. It's a little pop, 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 kind of a thing like that. You also have your heat and stuff down here. You can see defrost and all that good stuff. This is a fuel-injected plane, and there's only a slight difference in procedure compared to regular fuel-injected planes, and I'll show you when I get there. So what I'm going to do is shut the mixture. I'm going to push it all the way in. I'm going to I'll leave my throttle alone. I'm going to go ahead and pop on the battery and the alternator. It's going to honk at you. Master caution's off. One thing we would do at this point, by the way, is we come in here and reset our fuel flow meter. Right now it's at 95 gallons, which is awesome because I don't have to set this by hand. Cool, because I normally have to press the button and click it to the left and hold it for 2 minutes to get it to the correct fuel amount. It's such a pain in the butt, but this is a glorious tool, and you'll see why in a few minutes. So after I do that, of course, we're going to go ahead and take our throttle. We're going to push it all the way in. We're going to turn on our boost pump. That's it. We're going to pull the throttle out, crack it. We're going to pull the mixture out just like that. So to turn on lights on this thing, they're actually above your head, which I think is interesting because in the version that I fly, we don't have that. Well, we have the rotational beacon, and we have the recog light, just to kind of give everybody a heads up that we're about to get this thing started. Got all your warning lights here. By the way, the warning system on this plane is a little weird. We'll get to that in a minute, though. You'll see what I mean. We're going to go to nav mode, and you'll see why in a minute. All right, so that's all good to go. We're good to go. Radio master, I'm going to leave that switch alone. Starting this one, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to crank and slowly push in the mixture at the same time. And just like that, it catches. The difference there is other planes, you push the mixture in after it catches. This method, you just have to push it in. Now, you're probably saying, aren't you supposed to be using the throttle with the other hand? Yes. Welcome to starting a fuel-injected plane. Now that we're started, we're going to go ahead and pull the mixture handle out significantly to lean the mixture, and we're going to go ahead and press the radio master switch. Now, when I press that, you're probably going to observe the fact the screen doesn't come on. As a matter of fact, neither do any of these. Now, when I first saw that, I'm like, oh, you got to turn them on first. No, this is a brand new bug that actually just came out from a recent update. They're still working to crack this nugget here. One of the interesting things is if you actually select it like that and bring it to another menu, like you can see here, it doesn't make a difference. But it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to get lost. So we're going to keep it pretty simple for us today. So after starting this engine up, of course, the first thing we would do is we'd run around, make sure our gauges are okay. This plane does not heat up this fast. I'm sorry. It wouldn't be anywhere close to oil temperatures like that. We'd be here for several minutes with the plane kind of doing one of these things where we're waiting basically for the thing to kind of catch over. One nice thing that I do here, and you can hear my voice gets a little different, is I have the ability to go ahead and use an external radio. So I actually just set my external radio to go ahead and select what I like to do. You can even see that, I can be tweaking things like my vertical speed, and I can change my altitude that I'm desired to climb up to. Well, it's going to take a few minutes to engage. We're going to be careful with that in a minute. But I got my radio instructions. I got my ATIS. We never pick the ATIS up on the ground down here. Now, this is where the plane starts to get different than planes I normally fly. The first one is the takeoff procedure. And one of the things we need now are wing flaps. And wing flaps, I've never taken off wing flaps except for short field operations. So that was the first weird thing. The second weird thing is the switch for flaps is a press and hold. So you'd press and hold it to get the flap where you want it to do. So you notice I pressed and held it, it went all the way down. I pressed and held it, it went all the way up. I'm not pushing it and holding it. Where are you going, my friend? Tap it once, it goes to the takeoff position. Again, I'm not sure why they chose to do it that way. Like if I click it down once, it's going to go to 67. That's just not how that works. It's a press and hold, but that's okay. Now we're going to put it into the takeoff position. And when I look outside, you can see it puts an ever so slight twist on the wing. If you take off without flaps in this plane, you will be slightly disappointed because it'll come off the ground and then it goes, aww, and basically sinks. That's a technical term for not wanting to leave ground effects smoothly. So we're good to go. Everything's good. I got this all set here. Our direction today is going to be a 240. Keep it nice and simple for us. We're going to do some good old-fashioned navigation today. Like I said, actually, I'm sorry, 270. We're going to go basically due west, and we're going to head in that general direction, kind of over to our destination. Like I said, keep it simple. We don't need a GPS. If we had it, it'd be nice, but it's not really that critical of a big deal for us. So that's all set. That's looking pretty good to me. That's supposed to beep. Also, we should have turned on our elevator trim as well. It's kind of one of those things we didn't get to do. So let's go ahead and make our way over to the runway. One thing I was very impressed with this plane is how tight of a turning circle it has. You take the brake off, I can kick the plane over and just give it a tap. And that's amazing. I'm literally pivoting on that wheel. Speaking of wheels, by the way, let me go ahead and pause this for a second here. This aircraft has a rather interesting situation with wheels. And one of the cool things you don't get here that you get in the real world is the fact that this little door here that's designed to let the wheels suck in is always bent. And by bent, it's unnaturally bent. Like this would be to the right and this would be to the right also. And you really hope that the wheel doesn't smack into it when it retracts. Another thing you're going to see here, other than the fact the suspension, I should say, consists of a bunch of donuts, these little guys, very, 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 very hard suspension, by the way, is the fact there's not a lot of distance between the back wheel and the front wheel, which means when you land this plane, it's not going to like you very much, and you have to be very, very, very gentle with it, and you'll see what I mean when we do it. But anyway, let's go ahead and do our run up here. We're going to pop that thing up to fuel mixture. We're just going to rev this sucker up. Usually about 15 inches is going to be plenty. That is very, very slow. The real one's like, we gotta go. And that looks pretty good to me. And pull back just a little bit. 14.6 inches, pretty good, about 1700 RPM. So we're just going to go ahead and check our magnetos first. Nice and easy. I'm going to go ahead and click that once. Wow, these are really good magnetos. My gosh, those are good magnetos. Isn't it nice to be fuel injected? We're going to go ahead and exercise the blue handle. It does take that. It usually takes a moment to catch, too. It's not instant. That's actually very realistic. Then, of course, when we do all that, we can go ahead and cut the power and wait for the thing to finally kind of pull out on us, and I'll be ready to go. All right, that's good to go. Give it a tap there. We're ready for takeoff. We're going to kind of head over to the runway here. One thing they don't get right here is I don't have to push the throttle to get this thing to roll. It'll just roll on its own, kind of a thing. Now, we just get ourselves kind of established. We need a lot of runway. We don't have a lot of runway to utilize here, which is perfectly fine for me. One of the interesting things is the Mooney that I fly Firefly also does not have a GPS on it, which, when I think about that, it's actually kind of funny, because it's like, wow, this thing's a little more authentic than I thought it was. All right, we'll go ahead and spin ourselves around, kick it pretty aggressively. Good old-fashioned Ellington Airfield here. We're going to go ahead and tap the brake there and get all nice and established. So the takeoff procedure in this aircraft is pretty standard. It just has one little quirk, and that's the fact we don't retract the landing gear until we know we're getting basically run out of runway. It's just kind of one of those procedural things on this. The other thing we need to do is remember that our landing gear tend to snap off at a very, very low speed. So we have to get them out of the way quickly. So you have an interesting little combination of, oh, that's not helpful kind of a situation. So to take off, we're going to do short field, holding the brake here, and we're going to go ahead and apply about a half throttle here. Now, this is going to make the whole thing crouch is what it normally does. It's going to start vibrating angrily. I'll make sure our mixture's set. Everything's good to go. I like that. One of the things it says in the book is you're actually supposed to turn the fuel flow pump on during takeoff run. I don't know what the deal with that is. I think that's absurd. Let's go. Rotate basically once we get into the green arc. This plane does not take much to get in the air. It actually, like, B-52s into the air. You'll see what I mean. We've got about 40 knots there. Got about 50 knots there. 60. And there's no runway remaining, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of the landing gear. And we're going to go ahead and hold that 70 knots right there. Let that nose come down a little bit. All right, reset the landing gear handle. Just hold it just like this for a second. I'll wait until we're clear of obstacles. I think everybody for a moment there thought for a second I was going to run into those trees. It's okay. We've taken off from here before. I don't recommend it, by the way. We're getting a little close to the limitation. We're going to bring up the wing flaps. With this plane, by the way, when you bring up the wing flaps, the plane goes like this. That's one thing they did not quite get correct, which is kind of a shame. We're going to go ahead and execute our nice left turn kind of towards our initial heading here. Doing about 90, which is a pretty good speed. Like I said, we don't need to go ripping. I'm just trying to get myself about 1,000 feet here before we get too carried away. Looking down there at the little display, I've got about, can come around to west or so here. There we go. That's about west right there. I'm going to bring it over like that. That's pretty good. Now we're going to let the nose come down just a tiny bit, and we're going to build up to about 100 knots here. It takes not much. The trim on this plane is very sensitive, and the controls are awesomely sensitive, like in a good way, because they're direct rod controls. They're not cables, which means when you move the yoke, it moves. And I think all airplanes need to be that way. It's wonderful. And of course, we've got some Microsoft Flight Simulator trim going on here. All right, now we can go ahead and reduce our power to climb power. All we're going to do here is make this real simple. We're just going to reduce this down to 26, just like that. And of course, we're going to pull down our RPM just a little bit. We're going to come down to 2,400 RPM here. 26 and 24 adds up to 50, so that's a good RPM, and that's a good combination for climb there. Normally, of course, we'd be fixing with the cow flaps, so we don't have to in this version, which is kind of nice. I kind of like that. And then we can basically let go and enjoy our upward climb. And a Mooney is a very, very hard ride. It is a great plane. It is fantastic. It is indestructible. It'll take 9 Gs, but it is a hard ride. You feel every bump. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to argue up all the altitude that I want. We're going to go up to 7,500. You're saying, what? What are you doing? And the reason we're going up that high is this aircraft likes to go high. I'm going to go ahead and engage my automatic pilot real quick. Finish setting this business up. I'm going to go ahead and engage vertical speed mode. Vertical speed, I selected one already, so I don't have to worry about that too much. Usually 700 to 800 to 1,000 feet per minute is pretty good. Remember, this is one of the new Moonies. This isn't one of the old Moonies. So as a result, it's very, very effective. We're going to turn on heading hold, and all that's going to do is line up on that handy-dandy little heading that we have there. Go ahead and tap that sucker. Helps when you push all the buttons correctly, kind of a thing like that. Nice. And now we're definitely kind of on our way there, which is what we wanted to do. Not a bad plane. Like I said, pretty good. So with the Mooney, when you start climbing up, of course, this is when we start worrying about things like lights and things like that. I'm not going to get too panicky about any of that. Like I said, it's a relatively straightforward operation. We're not turbocharged or anything, so one of the things that's going to happen is as we climb, we have to actually smoothly push the throttle forward to keep our power at the same power that we want to be climbing at. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. I love these digital displays on this plane because it makes it vastly simpler to know exactly what our plane's doing at any given time, so it makes it very, very clear. Another problem we're going to have to be dealing with, of course, is we have fuel tanks that have a left side and a right side. generally with that. If we're on the right side of the clock, we go to the right tank. If we're on the left side of the clock, we go to the left tank. Right now, we're on the right side of the tank. We could actually flip this over if we wanted to the right. We could have taken off from the right. One thing they actually talk about in the Mooney book is they actually remind you that when you are using this plane, that you are expected to go ahead and use the emptier tank during takeoff versus the fuller tank. Go ahead and tap that real quick. I'm just going to guide us back on target here. There we go. Just kind of come back this way. The heading hold is being affected by the bug that is affecting on my rug or stuff on the right, which is funny because in the real plane, one of the things that the Mooney that I fly would start to do is it starts to do, I call it the roller coaster. And you'd be flying, all of a sudden it goes, whoa, whoa, just one of those. And you have to disengage the autopilot and take over by hand because it's, not trying to kill you, but it's definitely making you a little on the miserable side as far as how that kind of goes. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not that worried about it. So as you can see, the climb out here is pretty normal. One thing I was impressed with, it's not the fastest climb out. People think that this thing's a ripper. And this version is a ripper compared to the one that I fly. But it's not like any better than a 182 or anything like that. It's kind of conventional as far as the climb. Notice, by the way, that our throttle is all the way pushed in, and we're basically not gaining any more power here. We've crossed that basically that threshold that's going to start to affect us as far as being able to climb. So this is it for the first part of this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it so far. And the second point, we'll deal with kind of cruising along, trying not to get lost with this airplane. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the navigational tools that we have accessible to us. And of course, in the third video, we'll also take a look at actually operating this aircraft for landing, which is rather interesting. Enjoy.